You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm SavageMick.
And I'm the Christmas Bear Scarr.
Oh yes, the Christmas Bear.
And ho 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 it is! It's
Indeed.
Christmas time, and we're gonna look back at the best stuff of the year. I was also trying to do a ho 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 joke, and I said, "Oh, what's the ho 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 thing?" I was like, "Oh, that's too obvious, you know." But yeah,
DH0. I don't know.
Yeah, you know.
Well, we're going to workshop that one throughout the episode, folks. We have a few other things for our Christmas special lined up, but we're not going to give away anything in terms of what's because we've no sponsors. But we're also not going to give away anything in terms of what's in the running order, except to say we hope you're all going to have a very happy holiday. Scar, any message for your legions of bloodthirsty cultists?
Take it easy over the Christmas period. Visit your families, play games with them. You know, do the mutual bonds that will do you well in the new year as the conquest begin again.
I just want to say that was so authentic and heartwarming. Owen, I'm sure you could do better.
You see, the trick to be heartwarming is to pull out the hearts and throw them in the fires.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Crazy Kwanzaa, Tip Top Tet, and a solemn and dignified Ramadan, everybody.
That's amazing. Listen, folks, you really want to sort out arguments over Settlers of Catan or, oh, the gods help you, Monopoly. You fill up that Christmas stocking with all those bare dice you got and you start swinging. You just start swinging. And if someone gets in the way, that's their problem. That's how board games get settled at this time of joy and family fun. You hear me? Right. On that note, I hope you all. Yeah.
You know, we should pull out the best board game to take home to the normies.
Oh,
if they're going to insist on playing a board game, bring one you can actually teach them and get them to play. Friends don't let friends play Monopoly. And friends don't let family play Monopoly.
It's amazing that I still talk to my sisters after so much Monopoly when I knew no better. That's going to be later on the show, folks.
Absolutely.
But for now, there's going to be some Christmas music right now, probably royalty free, and we will see you in the next segment.
Merry Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a D4 hidden under the chair, waiting, biding its time, hoping to strike against some unsuspecting fool's foot. Ha 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 ha! It was lost in the last Dungeons and Dragons game, but now it knew all it needed was a chance.
So, we should probably look back upon the year that we've had. A year that, let's say, started strong with 3 almost back-to-back episodes about how Wizards of the Coast had made you angry.
They kept that streak up the whole year.
I don't recall anything from the start of the year. Wait, can we get a wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey effect? We go back in time to January. What happened in January, folks?
The Wizards of the Coast decided they were going to try to turn D&D into the Apple Store by closing all the doors, locking a huge number of people in, and charging extravagantly for everyone who wanted to actually try making money off D&D. And needless to say, people were quite angry, and a rebellion started coming together very quickly. Pathfinder has, over the course of the year, gone through the process of completely scrubbing the OGL of all of its from all of its rules, and now there is not an owlbear to be found in your Pathfinder re-released 2.5 edition books.
Nope.
Okay. That's stepping ahead slightly to the where we are now. So let's go back to how it started. Oh, and how angry were people?
They're pretty angry.
Couple of nerd posts somewhere, some angry giving out on Reddit, or was it something more substantial?
There was a lot of big talk. That's what it started with. But reputational damage was definitely done to WotC as a custodian of D&D. A lot of people don't trust him anymore, and the forking has already begun of people doing their own editions and building their own fantasy heartbreakers and rediscovering design principles from the 80s. It's been a fascinating time from a design development end. But it began with them just attempting to rug pull the OGL on people and going, yes, we actually can change this. I know it says we can't, but we're allowed to change this. And everything kicked off when people realized all of a sudden that WotC was going to get a slice of everything they were doing, potentially.
Little taste of all the action on the street corner.
They wanted to wet their beak.
OGL, of course, is the old gangster league or something like that, right?
I'm sure a rapper would refer to itself as in his trial, yes.
Of course, referring to the open gaming license, which they attempted to make anything but.
Yeah, they want to close that stuff up. It'll be the same, except different, except still the same. Their plan was basically to take D&D fully back in-house. They're looking to build a walled garden, and you don't want no one having no ladders. And the OGL was a big honking ladder that anyone could nip in, take something useful, and then nip back out again. And they were not at home to that, so they decided, right, we're gonna close these loopholes. We're gonna make it so our stuff is our stuff now, and no one else is allowed to use it. And there's an interesting argument back and forth about the how D&D has come to dominate based on the fact that it does have that openness, or is D&D dominant because it's D&D and almost fall before it. So they managed to severely annoy some people. A lot of people kept suspiciously quiet during this one, though, and that was noted. We assume the bigger boys and girls got a little news in advance and signed some deals in advance, and the details of those deals have remained quite quiet. But you'll see now, everyone. The cool thing to do is to make your own RPG instead to run on your stream or whatever else, and that's going to be what's going to happen going forward.
Cool, and in some cases ill-advised. It's turns out that simply reinventing the wheel. Well, you can't cut corners, and that's where some of the problems start. That was a tortured metaphor, but yes, the OGL, the Open Gaming License Crisis, it evolved so quickly. We did 2 episodes in January, back to back, on the ins and outs. It was a bit like the 40k fiction. Nothing happens for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, it just goes head over heels in the space of a month or 2. But it wasn't the only thing that was going to happen regarding D&D or Wizards or their machinations that year, was it? We stepped forward to February. We, what did we cover? Well, there was more OGL stuff, as it turned out. When they Wizards kind of had to give up on this end run, didn't they?
A retreat happened. A rapid retreat happened. And in fact, they gave away more than you'd ever think they would by publishing, fast publishing a bunch of content that wasn't previously in the the open game license into the open game license, which was kind of fascinating. There are certain things that were copyrighted are effectively in the OGL, so that you can use certain names, but they can't be the same character. So I think you can use Strad, but he can't be Strad von Zarowich, the character from Ravenloft. But you can have a guy called Strad. So it's just there was some fascinating knock-ons. It felt like a quick patch fix of just throw all this stuff into the onto this new open license, and but still, some people weren't convinced, and you saw people like Pathfinder Paizo starting to put together the ORC or Orc as a more secure bed of legal precedent for sharing RPG stuff.
That, of course, would sort of run into its own hurdles further down the line. But that was kind of. I think we thought, hey, maybe that's it. for the rest of this year. We can go back to focusing on, I don't know, Pokemon or something. Let me think now. March. Did March bring any more eruptions in this one, on this story? Was that we were? I think it cooled down just enough for people to go, "Hey, D&D movie's coming out, right? That'll be okay."
Although I do think that the damage had been done at that point, because I don't think the D&D movie made money like it was, if Hollywood did the books right, it would have been a good return. But Hollywood is not the books right.
Hollywood's not about doing the books right. The D&D movie did not do terribly well. There was an argument about, there's a couple of things. Superhero fatigue is one thing. There's also issues around, also stuff like more people annoyed about D&D. Maybe. Is D&D that big a brand to be able to make hundreds of millions at the box office? Maybe not. It's hard to say, but the D&D movie was not a massive success. It wasn't a total flop, but it was not a massive success.
It was a good movie.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. I think I might have seen it 3 times between the swings and roundabouts. And I was walking through Connolly Station yesterday, where Paramount Plus are advertising their big shows, and it's up there. But it was made by somebody else, right? And as it turns out, Hasbro sold off their E1 studio off the back of the D&D performance, I believe. So D&D the movie has found a new home with Paramount for the time being. Hopefully it will be one of those classics that sort of finds a new life in video, or I suppose these days on streaming services, finds that audience in a more relaxed atmosphere. Overall, I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed the heck out of it for what it was. Yes, it didn't need the FUBAR and bad publicity that had sort of come washing at the start of the year. Right, so let's see, where does that get us to? I'm trying to find a timeline of gaming news that isn't D&D. Yes. Anything else from the start of the year?
I mean,
you want to highlight?
Rather than just be worried about gaming news, there is our own efforts. This is the year that we finished up the Tome of Gygax.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Our great deep dive into the bowels of institutional Gygaxification. I think we did a very good job with that one. And
my therapist thinks I shouldn't be allowed to use the reverb button anymore, but okay. Yeah, we had good fun going through the hallowed prophetic words of 1G Gygax. What was Gary Gygax's second name? Is there something interesting?
Ernst,
right?
Gary is the second name. His first name is Ernst.
Ernst G. Okay, there you go. I wonder why people called him Gary instead.
Yeah, and his son, who is Ernst Jr., just goes by Ernie.
Yes, we covered in a nice, neat round 23 episodes. Myself and Scar went through the tome, the first edition D&D, Dungeon Master's Guide, and discovered some surprising things, like you could put boobies in our work back then, and no one batted an eyelid because they were in black and white, and that doesn't count. 15 feet is the standard width for a dungeon tunnel, and the origin of roll 3d6 6 times.
No, there was the denial of roll 3d6. This is like, here, our memories are already breaking down. This is how restrictive it was.
Shocking revelation. Look, it'll be up to you folks to go back and listen to find out exactly how that all went down. Let's just say that, fevers were had, hot debate over it. And then there on the page, the proof that that will either justify me or vilify me for all time. You just have to go and listen to the episode to find out which it is.
In April, Klaus Tuber, the designer of Settlers of Catan, died. That was
pouring one out.
A sad piece of news, but something worth mentioning.
We've had a lot of celebrity death news recently, so we're going to have to go and dig up see who else passed. But yeah, Settlers of Catan, probably the next generation's Monopoly. Like, there's plenty of copies of it out there. It's been published on 7 continents in 183 languages, I'm going to say, or anywhere you could find the numbers 1 to 12. It is, in fairness, it's an okay game. I think I gave my copy to my nieces and nephews this time last year, as I could find no further use for it. But as an entry into board gaming, it beats the pants off things like Game of Life or Ludo.
God, Ludo. Only slightly more tactical than Snakes and Ladders.
Damn.
It is. There's one choice: which piece you move. That's it.
Did he ever design anything else of note, or was Catan his opus?
Like, a board game. every board gamer, like, designer has done tons of stuff, but let's take a look at what Klaus has done. He was a dental technician. Really, he did Barbarossa, Edelverpflicht, Drunter and Druber, and the Settlers of Catan, all 4 of which won the Spiel des Jahres award, Game of the Year, which was pretty impressive. But I think Catan was his magnum opus.
Yeah.
His big hit. Yeah, he'll be fondly remembered as a good, an excellent game designer who certainly gave some of us some reprieve from having to try not to land on Mayfair or Park Avenue or whatever it is in your district. So pour one out for Klaus. Okay, that was April, wasn't it? We're rapidly running
April.
through the year. I mean, folks, I know there's all sorts of other things we're not covering.
Yeah,
Your favorite Kickstarter and
bring back to stuff like how social class or social position came in RPGs, and we kept revisiting the idea of how to get your players to not bring bazookas to parties. That seemed to keep coming up as well.
Clearly, it was troubling us at the time. So, stepping through, just tripping through the calendar, June, which we might end this segment. Oh, of course, we had in not D&D news, we did the last book or the last couple of books of the Enemy Within campaign from the folks over at Cubicle 7 drop this year.
Physicals came out, I believe, for Empire in Ruins.
Very good.
I think the digital was out 2022. I'd have to double check, but the physicals came out, I believe.
So if you did
they're on
get
the
to
shelf.
stack them, yeah.
And I actually finished running it last year. So no, I finished running it this year actually, early on, and
Yeah. And
I'm still playing in a campaign that's running through it as well.
Would you say it is the definitive edition now that they've thrown so much hard work updating and also those companion guides?
Yes, with a but. After playing it, you see a bunch of things that could be changed to make it a bit better, and that's the kind of the conversation you have immediately afterwards of, I would do this differently, I would do that differently, because the first 3 parts have well over 20 years of playtesting and people considering them, whereas parts 4 and 5 are brand spanking new, and they have, as a result, you're like, this could be done differently, this could be done better, this could be made more prominent, and it's interesting from that point of view. Where, like, Cubicle 7 do not want to start redoing them immediately now they've just got them out. And they were 10 books and they were all giant. But in a few years, I would say people were like, let's go back and have a relook at that and alter this bit a bit, make this bit a bit better. There's good bones here, but there needs to be some changes made. So that is completely normal. Like, immediately after you run an adventure, you immediately know how to make that adventure better.
Yeah.
But almost no one runs an adventure multiple times, so no one learns.
Yeah, and Enemy Within is the big exception, the one, the white whale of many a gamer. But yeah, you can listen to our episode on the first 4 books, and I'm sure we'll see the finale get a similar breakdown at some point.
Yeah, as soon as we finish playing the 5th one, we will do a review, myself and Liam.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this point of the year, there was also a lot of rumblings about how the next edition of D&D was going to land. If I recall, we'd start to get the first sort of talk about how this definitely wasn't going to be 6th Ed. So,
one
yeah.
D&D became the nomenclature, and the playtest documents started coming out, and people, of course, started going through those with combs.
Yeah, I mean, this is in an effort to appear approachable and relatable. They started taking in huge amounts of feedback and then sending their talking heads out in front of the cameras to respond to the feedback and to tell us that nothing got past them that wasn't sort of 80% approval. And it's been a really interesting process to watch. Which is, I mean, I think it's only been picking up in frequency the last few months.
Well, they don't have a lot of time. They have to release it in the next 12 months, or they miss the 50th anniversary and destroy whatever credibility they have left.
Would you say the playtest stuff, the new openness and openness to feedback, has done anything to improve what the next not edition is going to look like, or indeed Wizards standing with the community?
It's not a playtest. It's them doing press releases for this is what we're going to do, and then taking feedback on whether people like it or not. So you're going to get a bunch of rules that people like. That does not necessarily mean you'll get a well-designed game out of it. You'll get a bunch of rules people like, and they may end up not playing terribly well together. It's an interesting issue with what they're doing. Now, some of it apparently looks good. I don't care because I don't play the game. I argued people into playing second edition AD&D rather than play 5th Ed. But what they're doing is they're going to making sure that every decision they make is popular, or at least is voted for by the majority. Now, down that line of thought, you went in 3rd Ed with stuff like, well, should everyone be able to use magic weapons, just fighters? Everybody should be using magic weapons. Oh, cool. Should everyone have, everyone be the same XP, so the level the same range? Oh, yeah, everyone voted for that. That's great. Should wizards have more spells to cast with? Oh, they do. Awesome. Yeah, great. Should they have more choice with the spells? Oh, yeah, great. Oh, my goodness. All the casters are super overpowered and the fighter's terrible. That's weird. Oh, I'm going to see that one come.
I wonder how that happened. Yeah. So, designed by applause. And
yes,
instead of power creep, we now have power leap. Yeah, it's going to be, I don't know. We'll see. It's in a game that purports to be heroic fantasy, where you're probably not going to play past 7th level anyways. You probably want to front load all that stuff to get max enjoyment. We shall see how that turns out. I just know, just looking back at some of the headlines from the year, Rebellion are still in the gaming space. The owners of 2000 AD, I think they used to make computer games. They seem to have taken on a new life as a publisher for RPGs and tabletop games. I know their Dread Mega City 1 sort of tabletop
minis game for that, aren't they? They've done Dread, and they've got ABC Warriors coming out, and they've got they did Slain, and they've done they're in this tiny little microcosm, which is probably well served by a few thousand super loyal fans. They're just popping this stuff out for them. Here, guys, here's your skirmish game based on your beloved 80s comics properties. To the probably rapturous applause of a small number of mostly probably incredibly beardy men.
I only grow the beard out for the winter season. I do have a copy of the Slain starter box, which is an excellent little bit of kit. It has just enough minis and just enough rules. There's a brilliant quick start guide and a little bit of it has a resin menhir for you to paint and just enough little sort of wood huts and things that you can pop out and build to get on the table in an afternoon if you leave out the painting. And yeah, they're great little things. Now, it's become incredibly hard to find anything that, anything after its release. So in terms of miniature boxes or stuff like that. But yeah, they're doing a good job. They're supporting their lines pretty well. And I see that this year they acquired Tunnels and Trolls as well, which was around before any of us were kicking sticks. I think it was first published in 77, 78, so very close on the heels of actual D&D. But Tunnels and Trolls is another one of those grand dams of the period.
I started looking up miniatures here, and I found one of the Fatties at War, And there's one of the miniatures is a fatty with his big belly wheel, and there's two guys pushing behind him to get him moving forward.
Take that, Death Roller.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's Dread is a very funny, interesting place for a skirmish game to go. It's got lots of cool, kind of very quirky ideas you could put on the table. And as a small publisher, I guess they're free to be a little less polite, a little more radical.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Kiss My Axe starter set for Slania comes with some looks like papercraft or possibly plastic little huts.
Those are the ones.
Nice.
It's a great game, or great name for a box set. It's a very small box to get a lot in, and it's kind of all. I think there's some templates and things in there as well, but it works really well, and the models are lovely. They're sort of on my list of things to paint next year, hopefully.
Nice.
Who doesn't like a good men here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So and that you can just take and put using anything. Game of corporate dystopia, the boardrooms of the megacity. Men here. What's there for? Oh, it's it's acquired. It's decoration in the lobby.
Cultural artifact.
Yeah, we just use it for photo ops now. Right. What else do we have as we hit the summer months, which are traditionally quiet months in gaming?
Are you kidding? Gen Con's coming. The big launch of Gen Con, and which really dominated the CCG end of gaming this year, was Lorcana, the Disney. And I say Disney, I mean mostly animated Disney CCG. Hugely popular. Still being scalped beyond belief in terms of America. Like, people are telling tales of places where they get to buy stuff for RRP. It's kind of interesting in terms of like Disney adults and stuff buying as collectors, but also see card players trying to buy cards and trade and get their alt arts and stuff. And it's been interesting from that point of view. It's done incredibly well. It's hoovered up a huge amount of money in the space. I'm interested to see there are some other CCGs, because CCGs have kind of made a comeback after years of LCGs. And I'm interested to see how they do with Lorcana squatting on top. I think the established ones are doing okay, though Magic is really starting to have a bit of a tough time of it, because Magic has scorched the goodwill of a lot of its players, because this year, you will recall,
just trying to recall,
the 30th anniversary of Magic.
And they released a great, sort of really inclusive product for all those veteran players and newbies alike to enjoy, where you could spend... How much money did they want for 4 booster packs?
$1,000.
Sorry.
$1,000 for 4 boosters.
I don't know if it exists, but I really do need a GIF of someone shooting themselves in both feet and then reloading, because that was kind of what WotC started the year doing.
$1,000.
Yeah.
For 4 boosters.
And random cards. Just like back in the old days.
Yeah,
imagine
absolutely.
You could open it and get a Mox something or other, or a what's the Black Lotus. You could. You probably won't.
If this product had been $50, right, they would have sold thousands of them, and people would have had a great old time doing drafts. People would have been spent like twice as much as the cost of a booster to buy non-legal cards, and they would have been absolutely fine with it. But they had to charge people 20 times as much.
It was real whale bait.
Ridiculous.
And it reflected in the sort of the eBay offerings that showed up. I think the first Black Lotus that showed up was instantly, well, first of all, it was graded. It showed up graded 9.9. God, I can't imagine why. And was going for what, $3-4 grand off the tick, and that was just the opening bid. It was just kind of nutty, and it really did highlight, because gaming often sort of trails a little bit behind cultural trends, but it really did sort of highlight the NFT thirst that had bled into so many things we enjoy. at the start of the year and a holdover from the year before. But yeah, I mean, you got to wonder what the executive team at these companies is actually huffing, what they're snorting off the men here when they come up with these products.
They also we blazed full hard into Magic diluting and destroying its own flavor through a series
I'm really looking forward to Fluttershy and Bumblebee
Oh,
teaming
absolutely.
up with Doctor Who and G.I. Joe to fight, I don't know, the Xenomorphs.
When it gets real bad is you'll have K-pop, K-pop musicians and MMA fighters and just everything just vomited onto a board. And you'll be looking at this going, I don't know what this game is about anymore. It's the ultimate showdown of Ultimate Destiny all of a sudden. And I feel like if you actually liked Magic setting, you would have walked into the sea by now. You know, just that's I'm done. What did happen though is they did print a ludicrously rare Magic card, one Magic card.
Oh, that's right.
A Soul Magic card, the One Ring, which Post Malone bought. You know.
Can we just explain who or what Post Malone is, just for those who are as sheltered as I am and had to look this up?
I think he's just a white rapper.
He's a very successful, apparently quite skilled white rapper who loves Magic, who plays ridiculous Magic decks. So good on him. Good on him. And he bought this One Ring card, which is overpowered and busted. Like the regular One Ring is overpowered and busted, but they can't ban it for a couple of reasons, which is really funny. So it's incredibly overpushed. And they're doing it again. I believe the Marvel, I think, coming out next year is going to have they're going to do the 6 Infinity Stones / Infinity Gems. For the same reason.
So the takeaway is that this is the year that the IP-ification hit real hard in Magic. Everybody had a license. Was invited in.
They are not quite fire selling, but they are stripping the copper out of this the game.
Yikes!
What they're trying to do is basically make as much money as possible. I know Hasbro have been shopping around someone to either buy WotC or buy Magic. They were looking. And
why though?
So far, no bites.
Because money, Shane. Because you get to make ridiculous profits for a quarter. The next quarter, who cares? I'm done.
So with the big boys soiling the sheets, as it were, any strong contenders for the crown? I know there was some good CCGs that came out this year.
Lorcana has got a massive penetration. Flesh and Blood is hoovering up a lot of the competitive players.
That's the one I was thinking of, yeah.
You've got next year is going to have Star Wars Unlimited, which is FFG's desperate third or fourth roll of the dice at a Star Wars card game, depending on how you count matters. Them trying to go, okay, we're gonna do this again without rolling dice, but it is going to be collectible. I've looked at it. It looks fine. The art, I'm not a fan. It looks like art that was designed to be easy to make with Midjourney, but
ooh, okay, that's
which is another topic we can dive into. But it looks fine. It looks like it's designed to give you a relatively close game each time. I don't know how interesting it is, but I don't know how much money they've really spent on it, but we'll see. They're doing it as a CCG. It's going to come out in March or so. It's got Star Wars on it. It should sell a bunch. We will see. We will see.
This was definitely the year of the AI gen insert thing here. To greater or lesser degrees of success. Certainly, I myself have started using a lot of AI generated art for the thumbnails of these episodes and for other projects. It's coming a long way, but yeah, the first rush to the market is always going to be scrappy, to say the least. The artwork, I can see the appeal. I can see the allure, almost even the necessity. But my goodness, do not ask AI to write you anything compelling or interesting in either rules or lore for your product. It's not going to be very good yet.
Did I ever tell the story about someone using ChatGPT to write more rules as an expansion of rules I'd already written for Wolfrup?
Now is the time. Go for it.
So I wrote I've done some freelance work for Wolfrup 4th edition, and not very much, but bits and pieces. And what I did was I did the group advantage rules in Up in Arms, which have been generally well received. And someone was asking in a homebrew Discord channel about expanding the rules, and they said they put all the rules into ChatGPT to produce some expansion rules for it. And I had a very complex emotional reaction to that. I'm like, wow, this is, on the one hand, slightly flattering that someone cared enough to do that. On the second hand, you've used a large language model to try and do what I do. And I read them and I said, oh my God, these are almost playable, but not actually. They don't understand any of the principles behind it. They just use the same language to produce a bunch of effects that mostly do kind of nothing or are broken. Okay, I haven't been outmoded yet. That's a great feeling. But it's interesting for terms of taking a seed of stuff and expanding on it, and that was where somebody went. So, I can't do this myself. Let's see if a large language model can do it for me. And you're like, okay, cool. Yeah. A very funky experience.
It remains to be seen where we're going. June also brought us. Let me see now. I'm cribbing from the headlines. What was the Orc license? Response from is it Paizo behind the Orc license? They finally sort of nailed down what their license is going to be at the end of June. Beadle and Grimm, who I think I've talked about the show recently. Beadle and Grimm,
Deluxe boxed editions of RPGs.
They started showing up with stuff for I think they announced a lot of products. As it turns out, Beadle and Grimm happen to have a link to Scooby-Doo, and later on this year would also become relevant again. But we'll get there in part 2. What I'm doing here is trying to tie up June. It's impossible. You can't tie up the middle of a year. Lots of things happen, folks, and you probably remember some of them, and you're wondering why we haven't talked about others. But yeah, anything... When did Spelljammer... No, Spelljammer was last year, wasn't it? Did Planescape land?
If it did...
already, didn't it? I can't recall when it was. Okay, that's the end of part 1. It's shambolic as everything else we do. But we stuffed this stocking. We didn't carefully prepare it. We'll talk about some of the notables for the back half of the year in part 2. But first, something completely different.
Dave here, obviously of the adventuring party. And so here's my segment for game of the year and what have you. And what I'm going to pull out, do I even call it? No, it does have an RPG in it, but that's not the main point of it. The Lost Dungeon of Tonisborg is a bit of an oddity. Caught my eye on Kickstarter when that was rolling out. So, same crowd. So the designers of this are the same crowd who did the Secrets of Blackmoor documentary. Can't say I've watched it. Don't really know a huge amount about it. But the reason why that's relevant is during the making of that documentary, apparently a bunch of photocopies of a dungeon called Tonisborg were found in basically someone's attic, from the sounds of it, and Tonisborg, the original version, was written by one Greg Svensson, one of Dave Arneson's original players. And Svensson went on to write Tonisborg. And his original copies were lost, for something like 30 odd years. So, bit of, not great, but so somebody stumbled upon these photocopies that existed, forgotten by everyone, and so this team decided to bring it back in the form of the Lost Dungeon of Tonisborg, So it has reproductions of all the 10 level maps. But even as a piece of gaming archaeology, it's fascinating. Like as in how the game was originally played back in the mid 70s. Like they touch on the controversy about having a thief class at all, that is mechanically separate to the existing classes of fighter, cleric, and magic user. Or I'm probably forget whether it's cleric or priest. Anyway, and just stuff about the attitude of how the game is approached, because a lot of the players especially in Dave Arneson's game, and then later in Svensson's own house game, were very, very much wargamers, and very, very much had been thinking tactically for a long time before they touched these games. So they approached things like Tonesborg with an attitude of we push in, make our raid, grab what we can, and leave. As we're going to clear this whole thing. It can't be done. You can't, a single party, even the potentially huge parties of up to 20 people that could show up for these games, not to mention henchmen, couldn't take and hold an entire 10-level dungeon. So raids in and out were the order of the day, and exploration and making use of the environment, because this is very early Dungeons and Dragons, very what would be called rules light today. So an awful lot of make an attribute check for that, or roll a d6 for this, to try things, as opposed to pages and pages of codified rules for every possible eventuality. And so even just reading through the various the guide at the start of the book for about 50 odd pages is basically about the attitude of the game for players and GM, Dungeon Master even. Advice on how to run a game in this format, because again, at the time, this is just what they did. This wasn't necessarily going to be codified. Parties, for example, party sizes have gotten a lot smaller over the decades, and as they point out themselves, this generally seems to be more fun. So I know. Then it gets on to the actual Tonesborg itself, which by the notes here is meant to be a fairly high level dungeon, as in you're not supposed to go in here with first level characters, or at least you're not expected to get far into it. But it's like I have to confess now, I have not finished reading this hardback, but it's nice. There's the maps are copied, and fresh and modern versions have been popped out. Notes have been reinterpreted where they needed to be, because even Mr. Svensson himself, it's been 30 odd years. He does not remember what all of his notes, what all the scratches and scrolls meant. So, so as far as I can see, there isn't a PDF available of this. There is a paperback version, and there's the hardcover. I'll say the hardcover is very nice. I'm certainly enjoying reading it, and it's certainly given me some insights into how the very first D&D games were run. But I don't like it stood out for me this year amongst a lot of other projects that this one it's a strange duality of labors of love. Originally, the original Tonesborg, written by Svensson as one of the first D&D players and one of the first D&D GMs, but also Svensson and and other people who have brought this back, after it unexpectedly reappearing. So they're I see merit in that passion as well, and it's a very well realized effort. And Anyhow, that is I'm going to say my game of the year.
And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that, folks. And there's more to come right after we've finished off rounding out the year in review 2023. And this time, to catch up on the back half of the year, we're joined by... Say hello.
Hello, I'm Dave.
I'm Owen.
We got a Scarr in there somewhere, right, Warlord? Or sorry, are you busy glugging down that finely curated rich people water? Hydrated. Stay hydrated, folks.
Artisanal alpine water.
Filtered through at least one. Filtered through charcoal sourced from pillaged villages.
Yeah, I provide the charcoal, and they provide, all of their resources.
This is like when Hollywood celebrities start their own gin company.
Slightly fewer casualties, but yeah.
Aqua Conquestia. Okay, so now that we got the product plugs out of the way, although it's a tie-in kind of year. Lots of things got tied into lots of other things. Did The Walking Dead get their RPG out the door? I know there's another.
Vaguely sounds familiar.
I think they did. Magic has been doing their everything's magic now.
Yeah, it's just like, I remember there was a article a few years ago that there was going to be Lorcana was going to come to Magic, and Magic was going to come to Lorcana, and we for a good solid half hour we all believed it. Then someone pointed out it was a parody article, but it's gotten to the point where we believe that kind of thing now.
I did get caught out by at least one parody post on one of the tubes this year, and I rushed to the Discord. Come join our Discord to breathlessly tell everybody that I don't know they were about to introduce the Transformer class into D&D, where you could play a robot in disguise. It's been that kind of year.
Yeah, come to our Discord, and Savage can lie to you at length. But
at least it's a human lying to you. But we'll talk about the AI later.
Hey, the machine is barely learning to lie.
It's mostly just wrong, but anyway, later. But yeah, this is definitely an uptick in media properties. And was the Avatar the Last Airbender RPG this year or last year?
I think it kickstarted last year. I'd have to double check that. I know it did super well, and it is powered by the Apocalypse, right? So it's going to be.
They didn't change to 5e 3 weeks before release.
Oh God!
So it's powered by the Apocalypse, so it's going to be between a C+ and a B-. No more, no less.
Evil Genius games, the core book for Everyday Heroes was out in December last year, but their supplements have been out since. So you're talking stuff like Kong Skull Island Cinematic Adventure, Pacific Rim, Escape from New York. So yeah, a lot of cinema tie-ins this year.
Dare I ask, has anyone read or played one of those?
Nope, not yet. Curious though, I have to admit.
I may have found some PDFs of the various.
Is it a choose your own adventure thing? Is it a here's an adventure based on the movie?
I think it's an adventure for. I think it's called Everyday Heroes, the 5e D21.
Yeah, it's 5e compatible.
Yeah, but is it like you're playing the film, and here's all the encounters in the film set out? What's it doing?
I think it's supposed to be an original adventure that they may have taken liberties with, but that's the Kickstarter spiel. I don't know if that's how it actually turned out.
One player gets to play Kong, and everybody else gets to argue about why it should have been them.
This is
just
my
like the Indiana Jones adventure.
My kind of question here for some of these. Some of them are an ensemble piece. Others of them, more or less solo. I'm just curious. What does it look like?
Maybe there's a Kong dice or Kong clock that, no matter what happens, a Kong clock, I like that. And it goes Kong, and then Kong shows up after, you've rolled a number of ones or double sixes or whatever the hell the system uses. Lots of tie-ins. It was a weird. It's continuing to be a weird year for that kind of crossover stuff. Kieran Gillen's DIE role-playing game came out on the back of the comic books he'd written, which were a sort of a psychological journey through a failed or I've read some of them. I didn't read all of them. But I think it was interesting that he, the process of role-playing and tabletop, the formative kind of influence it can have on groups and friends, and sometimes people who are no longer your friends, and then the consequences of that being explored in the sort of fantasy realm down the line. And then he turns around and kind of turns that into a role-playing system as well. So there's a lot of... one of the better examples of cross-pollinating, the transmedia stuff that we were so hot for about 10 years ago, what we got instead were multiverses, because it's simpler to explain that to executives. But it was crafted, it was not... It did a good Kickstarter, about 500,000, I think. But it was at least a crafted effort, whatever you might think of the system or the comic books or whatever. It had a voice, it had a vision, and it's doing something particular. And in many ways, quite a novel sort of system. I'm not going to say it's mechanically robust, but it is certainly novel. It opens the way to thinking about doing other things with your dice. But that's not really... That would I say a rare gem in in a very spotty transmedia landscape this year. Because the other thing that happened in August was Lorcana finally released as Disney's and Ravenberg's, of all people, big push into the collectible card game space. And by all accounts, it's doing absolute gangbusters. I don't know.
It's a tremendous reveal of the perfidy of the American retailers, the so-called friendly local game store. Like, everyone's going, oh my god, they're almost charging us MRSP at this point. And I'm like, why aren't they charging you MSRP? I was like, what? I was like, why aren't they? What additional costs are they incurring bringing this to market? Is there any? Or are they just saying, frankly, there's profit to be had? Which is admittedly very on theme for Disney. But at the same time, like, they're literally going, yes, we're charging you 3 times as much for boosters because there's a frenzy on because everyone wants to play it. And the Disney adults have started to hang around and, will lap up the slop no matter whatever it is. I mean, guys...
Can we just make it clear? You're saying that the friendly, inverted commas, local game stores may have price gouged on a hard-to-find thing.
There was a number of them writing screeds that wouldn't have looked at a place on an Ayn Rand fan fiction website talking about how, this is the only moral thing I can do. The only moral thing I can do here is to gouge you. It was incredible.
That's interesting.
It was like, if I try, I won't get enough of this game to support it. So what can I do? If I sell it at retail, the scalpers will sweep in and take it all. All I can do is make some money right now and hope later the game is available at a reasonable price. I'm like, you are the reason it's not available for a reasonable price.
That's
presumably
incredible.
It's so good.
And this is a short-term frenzy in the banana bucket, because this is going to end up in Walmart. This is going to end up in Best Buy. This is going to end up in Barnes & Noble. Yeah, at recommended retail price. They're going to order crates of it.
No, so the problem is that basically when it shows up in those shops, the scalpers swarm in, buy it up, and then flip it. And that's all that's happening. Like, they're just starting to get to the point. The second set is out.
They're reprinting the first set as well.
They've done reprint. Third. I think they're on their third reprint of the first set, or the second or third reprint of the first set, and it's making its way out now. And so the prices are starting to come down. Oh, it's only $1. The boosters are only $1 over ORP, and I was like, those boosters started at $5.50. They were a full $1 to $1.50 more expensive than the thing, and you guys are playing $1 more and go, God, what Grabthar's hammer? What savings? I mean. It was deranged. Like, in Europe, that didn't happen. Like, there was some places where it was a little more expensive, but mostly people were playing retail. Like, if you went to Smith's, I think you paid a little more for the starters and maybe a little more for the boosters. I haven't bought any, so I don't know. But I was looking at this going, this is crazy talk, guys. we're not getting fully gouged. We're only getting slightly gouged over RP.
Stabbed, yeah.
This is I'm ecstatic about this. What a win!
Just that reminds me of another fine product which may get upmarked a little bit. Magic the Gathering. And they had also tying back to the licensed property links, because the Magic the Gathering 23 had amongst more Magic the Gathering properties like Phyrexia and what have you. You also had such names as Lord of the Rings and Doctor Who.
Yeah.
God almighty. If I actually liked the setting of Magic the Gathering, I would have walked into the sea by now. I mean, like this, like it's like, okay, Becky Lynch is going to tap to bounce Phyrexia back to your hand so they can play Optimus Prime for 6 less, so he can devour the faces of all those Care Bears, which allows me to play offset from my banished area. Once offset enters play, I'm able to summon Nicki Minaj in defense mode. And shouldn't you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh? Yeah, it's part of it. I summon Yugi from thing, and I play, dear God Almighty, like it's Fortnite, the card game.
I was just going to say, it is the Fortnitification.
It's Fortnite.
I've got a lot of thoughts about.
All the jelly beans in with your ice cream, and here's some Tabasco sauce on top of it, and here's a bunch of chorizo, and now some chocolate sauce, and like, God Almighty.
My kid, he's like 9 now. He'll be 10 at some point, usually a year after. He goes to those ice cream places and he orders the most god awful, and he then devours it with what I can only describe as unironic glee, and it looks as bad as it sounds, and it tastes worse. That is the market they are chasing.
Yeah, it's just.
I've got some interesting thoughts about and I haven't had interesting thoughts about the collectible card game market quite a while. But off the back of this week's news, which we're getting to it, I had a bit of a synthesis of ideas about why Hasbro are doing things, but I think we're only at August yet.
Yeah,
it kind of went a bit quiet. We got some game releases.
No,
we got some Pathfinder, didn't we?
We did, but like the big thing that crushes August, right, is Baldur's Gate 3 came out.
Oh man.
That crushed August. Like, everyone else can't remember. And what happened? Stuff happened in August. Gen Con was on. A million things happened in August. No one can remember them because they were all playing Baldur's Gate 3. It was like flashing back to 2005, where all of a sudden everyone's just playing WoW.
Wow, yeah. You know? I just got to the end of Chapter 1 in Baldur's Gate, just like literally this week. And I've got a lot of game ahead of me. And I'm pretty sure I'm on one of the most scuffed saves you can have. Characters have disappeared. I killed the dog. I'm really sorry. But yeah, it's amazing. And think that was back in August, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's dominated the year, and of course, it picked up Game of the Year at the Game Awards a couple of weeks ago, or last week, or an indeterminate amount of time ago. What is time at the end of a year? We're all looking ahead and trying to desperately remember what happened. But yes, Gen Con. Gen Con's where the big announcements happen.
Oh, tons. But what really happens, I was interested in, was they announced that they were going to remaster Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, what the remaster amounted to was them going through and stripping out anything that was mentioned in the OGL. This has since come out in late November, early December, and it's basically two new core books to replace the old player's book, and later on they're going to do a monster book and a second player's core. So the old Pathfinder core rulebook is now technically out of date. You can get a player's core and a GM's core, and the player core 1 is out, GM's core, and then later next year there's going to be a player's core 2 and a bestiary. Now, the game is largely still the same. The changes amount to a balance pass on a couple of the classes that were underperforming, and they stripped out anything that's mentioned in the OGL. So any spell that's in the OGL got its name changed and often its effects tweaked to try and make it operate a bit better under the meta they've learned about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. They got rid of alignment. They got rid of positive and negative energy. They replace them with void and I'm trying to remember what the other one is. There's void and something else, healing thing, and they've put in spirit damage. They've kind of taken out anything that was purely in the OGL. It's gone from the game. They do not trust what WotC are saying. They think WotC are going to take another run at them in some half, and they are future-proofing themselves against that. They got rid of the colored dragons. There's going to be dragons are based in arcane magical schools now. So there's they're like it's gone. Don't
differentiate. Yeah, I mean, this is the edition. The lawyers made us do an edition. Look, sometimes success just falls in your lap, because if we go back to when the OGL was kicking off, which I know, revisiting old business, Paizo made out like gangbusters. They had massive sales of their core books on the back of all the hoopla over the OGL, and what did they did a year's worth of business inside 3 months in terms of core book sales, and then they get to turn around and go, well, here's the lawyers made us do an edition for all those people who just bought the core books, which are now technically and legally defunct in some way.
Still largely usable, and you can always go into Archives and Nethys, and all the rules are up there for free. So it's
that's the move that they had to make. It's been a great year for Pathfinder. It looks like
absolutely
next year could be even better. I have to applaud them, but they were just right place, right time.
Basically, because they talked about it and said it would have been way better for us to do a new edition if we were looking to make money. It would have been way better. This is a stopgap that we did because they did it in under 9 months. That's the mad thing. They basically produced a whole new core book in under 9 months. So who knows what other stuff had to get tossed out of the pram to go, we don't have time for doing that now, we're doing this instead. And they produced this new core book in a very short turnaround. They also announced that they are doing shifting Starfinder from its currently kind of half house stage between an interstitial edition between first edition Pathfinder and second edition Pathfinder into Starfinder second edition, which is going to be 100% compatible with Pathfinder second edition. And so people were wondering, oh wow, is a soldier just going to be a reflavored fighter? And they're like, no, it's going to be completely different. And they have shown some stuff and it looks really cool. So really looking forward to that, to have a science fantasy kind of flavor available to me to play instead of just Pathfinder.
Those are the two flavors of RPG. Let us not forget.
Yes,
the one with swords and the one with swords and guns.
That is how it is.
And if you want to play any other kind of role play, you're flat out of luck, because nobody releases role-playing games that say cover comedy or maybe give you that Stranger Things vibe. None of these exist, and none of them came out this year. I jest. Kids and Bikes, second edition. If you're looking to kick that kind of Stranger Thing, that's by Hunter Entertainment or Hunter Games or something that they're called that.
For comedy, Fi, I say, the D6 comedy fantasy parody RPG exists.
Oh yeah? I think there's a Monty Python one as well. Or at least got announced this year. But
came out this year.
It did come out, yeah.
End of the year, November, I think it came out. It's meant to be good. I haven't read it myself, but it's meant to be good.
Did the Gloomhaven RPG tie-in finally show up?
The Gloomhaven RPG Kickstarter happened around August. And it was crazy because they went, here's our RPG. Also, we're doing minis for every model in Gloomhaven. So this is about kind of 700 minis. Also, we're doing a second edition of Gloomhaven, which is, is it just some tweaks? No, it's an almost completely different game to first edition Gloomhaven. And they ran that as the one Kickstarter. It was ridiculous. It was like, how much money do I have to spend to get all this content that I want? That much. Right, guys, that ain't happening. Oh yeah, we're also adding in revised rulebooks for Frosthaven that you can buy, where instead of having to take out all the map tokens and assemble the map, you just have a giant rulebook you open and the map is there, which is the ideal way to do maps in a dungeon crawling board game, especially campaign one, cutting down the setup time. And
folks, if you want to see our recent episode on giant Kickstarters,
yep,
this might be the time. But that's hopping forward to November. I think we were back.
The timeline is very confused. It's kind of like a multiverse of things were happening. Okay. Anyone want to pick? Scar, do you have a pick from this back half of the year you want to highlight?
I mean, do we want to do the AI thing now, or
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. It's still quite nebulous as to what the implications of AI in the industry will be, but we had a couple of tips of icebergs popping up. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not necessarily. I'm no Elon Musk supporter or anything like that. I'm no major technophile. I don't subscribe to the automatic doom and gloom that of the AI revolution and all that. But the gaming space is a very interesting one where there's eternally a tension between the dreams of madmen, as Owen likes to put it, where games are created by people in their garages to their own idiosyncratic things, and we discard endless waves of heartbreaker games and lionize the successes. It's an interesting creative environment, but also like the really successful RPG of games in general are those that have like a proper support network of writers, artists, distribution staff, people who all that in their expertise, their creativity, and just the hard work of getting a game into the hands of its players. And AI and the ability to just sort of generate art, generate PDF templates, outlaying, and all that kind of stuff promises one of those sides of the industry a lot while threatening the other with a very large and rusty knife. I totally understand that there's a big section of prospective RPG writers who would very much like to have AI to automate the process of getting their creative vision onto paper and put out there, and make sure that rather than having to collaborate with an artist, they just imagine what they want and iterate Mid-Journey 57 times until it has all the fingers that they expected. I understand that impulse, but also I totally understand the artists and layout people and marketing people who are very worried that their jobs are at risk, their livelihoods are at risk, and they may be outcompeted by something that, while not certainly not as good as them in any way yet, provides convenience on a scale that they can't really do much about.
Yeah, I mean, like AI drawing could be done in seconds, potentially. Like,
right. What do we say about that? I straddle a lot of fences on this one. It's early days. It's a threat to. It's a threat to the established order, the way of things. But then so was print on demand, and it's been large. And the very people who would have told you that things should stay the way they are, the kind of the grognardy kind of, I prefer editions when they didn't have numbers, or when your race was your class, kind of people have benefited the most from print on demand, which has disrupted sort of supply chains and how game materials delivered. This, of course, is a bit wilder and a bit woollier and much more prone to abuse in some sense. And in fact, like so many great colonial expeditions, it's kind of founded on abuse. We know, but perhaps can't legally prove that a lot of these large language models and image generators have been trained on copyrighted information and works that they had absolutely no right to draw from. But that genie is well out of the bottle. And that's the world we live in now. The land grab has happened, and there's no going back. I think it opened. There's a huge democratization to it as well. We did, I think it was this year, was it last year? Time has collapsed. We reviewed an AI artwork generated product, some old gods or something or other, and it was basic, but it was certainly someone who could not have brought that level of product to the market without the use of these tools prior to this. And like, it's been a wild year. If you follow any of the rumblings in the AI industry, folks, you know just how weird it's getting. Like, if you thought producing images was crazy, we're seeing text to video now that is effective and credible and doable. Now, it can only do about 4 or 5 seconds of output on any given prompt at the moment. But the cinemaphiles among you might be aware of the interesting fact that since the 1950s, the average shot length in any major motion pictures got dropped from about 10 seconds to about 3. So, given the Michael Bayification of the cinematic world, or at least the visual language of cinema, there's no reason not to expect movies to be pumped out with this stuff very soon. Now, I think it's only just getting good at math, which is interesting because that's fundamentally where game systems live. The math has to more or less pan out. Comments as to why that isn't true on the back of a postcard, but it's if you're a game system writer in the RPG space, I'd say you're probably safe enough for the moment. But the other creative work, layout, text and images, is it's going to be interesting. I would say now most of the flack that the big boys caught this year was for artists using AI tools to generate. So artists were still in the driver's seat. Digital art was not well regarded because you can't do art with Photoshop. That's cheating. And other such nonsense were bandied about back in the day. AI artwork will probably become just another tool in the box. Look, we use it ourselves every episode. Almost every episode since, about the middle of this year, has been produced with thumbnail that AI artwork has at least touched. And generally outright made. And that's not artwork I was in a position to produce. I have the talent to produce on my own. And we didn't spend a huge amount of money on it because this is not a project that makes money. So it has allowed us to up our production game in at least that aspect. But there's if this was an operation that made money, would we be on the horns of a dilemma because we should be hiring thumbnail artists? Hard to justify it when I could get it done for next to free.
Yeah, like,
we don't make money. That's the big difference. We don't make money. We're not monetized. We make no money of this. This is done volunteer basis in our free time. This loses a small amount of money for us. So, like, from that point of view, the difference for me is if you are making money off something and you could afford to pay an artist, and instead of paying an artist, you go to an AI thing, which is probably trained itself by copying huge amounts of art produced by other people. You're making a rod to beat your own back, basically. By if you can, could you start procedurally generating podcasts? Probably. Would
they be better than this? Worse? About the same? About the same.
I'd like to think my stuff would be a little worse, but whatever. I've had that experience of the rules writing. Someone trying to use ChatGPT to generate more rules based on rules I've written, and it didn't work. But I was like, this almost worked. It didn't work, but it almost worked just by predictive. And the weird thing was, the better your language was in terms of templating, the better it was able to follow it. So better templated language was easier for it to copy. Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
The more woolly Gygaxian, flourishes probably make the rules text harder to copy. Makes it hard to read as well, but
who's writing the most AI copyable stuff? Is Kevin Crawford in that frame? He seems like a pretty rigorous rules writer, but I'm not sure.
Done the same stuff a fair bit across many books, so I don't know, maybe his patterns might show up a little.
You standardize that stuff, feed it to the language model. Like I said, it's like the big boys. Okay,
Yeah, I think
company's got a company. They got to make money, and if you put out a product that is predominantly made with AI art, say, I think that's something the market is going to recognize pretty quickly. And if you put it out and look for the same amount of money for it, I think customers would be quite within the rights to go, well, it's not a great product. It's an okay product. I wouldn't pay a great price for it. I'll pay an okay price for it. Distinctive style is going to be it's probably the saving grace of the better kinds of artists out there who are willing to do the work. Now, whether fledgling RPG companies can afford to pay them, they might be better off doing commercial work for, say, production studios who need concept art, or computer game companies who need character design done, and pay the industry rates that justify, that attract top talent. RPG industry has this problem where they try and drive costs down on production and then sell premium products at quite a price. I mean, RPG books aren't getting any cheaper. Arguably, while they're still made by humans, they're justify those prices. It's a niche hobby after all. But if I feel like I could probably roll my own just as easily, then I'm not sure as a customer I'm going to be looking to spend, WotC money or even Paizo money to acquire what has just been sort of churned out at the push of a button. It's going to be an interesting market in the next couple of years, and being distinctive is probably going to help. But hasn't it always? Right. Okay. Do we have any other good ones?
Well, the bookmarks of the year. The very famous bookmarks.
Yeah, we started this retrospective speaking about the interesting developments at the OGL and how WotC had stirred up the legal elements of the RPG space with their shenanigans, and now we're getting into more classic, capitalist fallout. As I watched Godzilla -1 last night. A wonderful movie. Only enhanced by having a giant radioactive lizard in it, and it was very much a movie about the detritus left of people's lives as gigantic corporate and lizardy forces clashed and ruined everything. And it just seems very, very relevant to the current WotC situation.
So is Godzilla a metaphor for holiday layoffs or CEO reimbursement? I can't decide which. We are, of course, obliquely talking about the fact that within the last few days, as of the date of this recording, WotC have announced a further 1,100 people being laid off over the next 6-ish months, on top of the 800 that were released from their obligations to show up for work earlier this year, bringing to grand total of just shy of 2,000 Hasbro employees.
Yeah.
I should qualify that. Hasbro employees. A workforce that I think at the start of the year stood at about 6,500 people. So a big cut, and not necessarily all of them are box packers and shelf stackers.
Oh, by no means.
They've cut a lot of the creative leads. They've cut marketing people. They've cut production design people. They've cut their online people. Like this is. Oh, we should mention, of course, that this is the same year when WotC released a D&D TV on-demand channel thing called, I don't know, D&D Live or something like that. Damned if I can find it anywhere, but apparently it's out there. So people who are involved in that production are gone. Larian Studios, when asked for a comment, mentioned that most of the original team that had helped them bring Dungeons and Dragons and Larian together for Baldur's Gate 3, most of the people who were in that original meeting gone. So these are senior people at WotC. These are people who are all the way plugged into making the big calls on what happens with Magic's the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, and they've been shown the door with days to go until Christmas. Thoughts, folks?
I think a lot of much cheaper contractors are going to be hired very quickly for D&D's new edition.
I am okay, folks. I had my hopes for, like, we've had previous episodes where I explained my hopes for one D&D as it is, I think, currently known. I'll see how long that lasts. Those hopes I have over the last year or so just eternally been ground down. I mean, okay, the recent previews of the Monk, I thought, show that they at least had some better grasp on class design after 10 years. So I was saying, it's looking like it's going to be fine. Now, hearing this, seeing what's happening, I'm genuinely worried that we are not going to get the 50th anniversary of D&D this year. I think there's a chance that in this chaos that D&D will slip into 2025 and they'll release an anniversary edition after the anniversary year and not care. And that's that sounds very selfish because you should really be angry about all the people who lost their job for no reason. But that's general American corporate nonsense where apparently there's no such thing as giving notice. But yeah, like, either someone at WotC or someone at Hasbro has just is taking like a match to the tender of the game toy producing world, and I'm sure the stuff is just as bad at is Mattel Hasbro subsidiary.
Mattel's doing quite well at the moment, actually.
Well, yeah, they had the movie. Well, Hasbro had a movie too, and that didn't work out.
Well, Owen, I leave the wasteland that is this floor to you for the moment. I've got stuff I want to talk about on this, but I figure you've got a well-rounded bit to lead us in.
Oh, look, this is the deliberate corporate copper wire stripping that occurs when let's goose the numbers before release. We've profits are down in some quarters. We want a good quarterly report. Let's just cut payroll. It's the best because we could just hire true believers who can slide in and work for 9 cents a word or $150 an art piece. Or frankly, eventually people are going to get tired about complaining about AI art, and then it'll be all creamery butter for us. They've made the calculation, ultimately, that RPG players have no discernible taste. They do not recognize when something is good or bad, and in fact will actively argue that there's no such thing as a good or bad product. It's just to your taste. They'll basically gamble that there's no stars. They've cut no stars. They've cut nobody that anybody actually cares about. The brand is the draw, and a freelancer can do your job for no money. I'm going to spend $2,000 making this book, sell it for $50, and sell 100,000, 200,000 copies digitally. Yeah. Like, that's the way it's like. No one, like, the number of people as an RPG creative who've made a living out of it is vanishingly small, like incredibly small.
Yeah.
And this is even less. This is reducing it down to hobbyists, like pure hobbyists or desperate fanboys, looking to just get a sweet taste of the e-credit that is, I worked on some D&D stuff for the anniversary. Like, there's no, like, you're cutting out so much institutional knowledge, and you've got to get this book out there, and you're cutting people out who actually make stuff. Like, I mean, I don't think I don't think there's a kind of any rock star creators in there who would do anything crazy and think, but they were all competent people. and you've gotten rid of them, and you're going to just try and put something together with what you've remained of a demoralized workforce. Now, I've watched the game industry cut 10,000 people between RPGs and computer games every now over the course of the last year. And if you think morale in the company when the creative end of it is high anywhere, you're about to be disabused. They're coasting on the fact that there's no union. They're coasting on it. And I mean, if guys buy a clue, you're going to have to put together a union in a way that you're going to have to leverage your tech savvy. You're going to have to leverage kind of anonymous ways of doing it, so you can't just get nipped in the bud. And you're up against companies that will happily spend 100 million this year to cut payroll costs by $1 million a year. They will happily spend that because the thing they resent most in the world is paying people for their labor. Genuinely, they resent that more than anything else. They'll pay for corporate analysis. They'll pay for flights. They'll pay for, fancy offices. But paying for people, sticks in their craw. Just hate it, Like, that's the way it is. They hate it so much.
Yeah. and the thing is, like, the people they're cutting, it's not just the blatant money grabbing of it. It's the type of people they're cutting. Like, these are like a lot of, like I say, doesn't seem to be like a lot of rock star staff who are thinking. So there's design veterans in there who've had long careers. But what really I noticed immediately was the production people they're cutting. The people who get the book over the line, who get the paper into the printing machine.
Just have AI lay it out. Have AI lay it out.
I don't think that good layout is trickier to come by than I think executives realize.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the real thing. It's the malfeasance is one thing. The complete lack of awareness of what they're giving up. That's the real kicker. Is like they do not realize that they are burning some of the best stuff they have.
Right. Never underestimate your enemy. And I've been a runner for a long time. Those corpo guys are definitely my enemy. But worth watching the moves and figuring out what they're going to do. I'd say, based on who they've laid off, it's pretty clear. There is malfeasance here, but its sharpest point is closer to the tip. Hasbro are a toy company, and toy sales are down. But they have attached to them a couple of big brands that have done very well, especially in the pandemic years, namely D&D and Magic the Gathering. And they look out across the competitive landscape and they see less children, because our generation didn't have them, which means less sales in the future, which is a problem because now you got to try and figure out who you're going to sell your toys to. Collectibles market has proven very lucrative.
I wonder why all those anime figures get produced in a country with such a tiny birth rate. That's the same principle.
There you go. We're heading in the same direction here in the rest of the first world. And people don't like to really think about it, but it's going to have huge consequences down the line. And Hasbro do think about it because they are a toy company and they are running out of children to sell to. Now, they have a very profitable but very volatile subsidiary called Wizards of the Coast. And they have had an awful lot of ink spilled this year about what they're doing, who they are, what their motivations are, and all the rest. It would be much easier to handle this if you did two things. Ossify the products so that they stop changing wildly and generating lots of trouble. And that means ossify the legal framework under which they're produced and ossify the rules themselves. We've looked at the playtest stuff for D&D. It's like there's nothing there that's really anything other than we're playing around with the weights on character classes. I haven't looked at the playtest stuff in a while, so I could be wrong here, but I don't see any big levers being pulled on the fundamental core mechanics. And if WotC have learned anything from producing games, they know that fundamental core mechanics, are they good or bad? As Owen points out, doesn't really matter from their perspective. Can you put them in a box and stick an IP on top of them? If you can, Job's a good one. You've got your new Monopoly. Anyone looked at the big erratic changes in Monopoly this year? That's because there haven't been any for. I don't think there've ever been any. It's very likely that the same rules for Monopoly exist in every single copy of Monopoly on the shelves today, as were there 20 years ago, maybe longer.
No, they had the speed guide.
Sure. So they tinker to. They brought in credit cards and things like that to manage money. If anything, they've probably reduced the complexity of Monopoly, an already fairly simple game. And D&D is definitely on the block for that. Because what Hasbro needs is a platform to apply IPs to and fill toy stores with. Or a strong collectible market, and that's where that's where Magic the Gathering comes in. Again, slap IPs on it and keep selling. Sell the IPs. Make people buy the nostalgia. Remember this thing you liked? Hasbro have to turn into a remember this company because they're running out of new customers. So yeah, you ossify the properties so that they don't change in ways that matter and do change in terms of what characters are on the front. So G.I. Joe, D&D, Transformers D&D, My Little Pony D&D, and call your friends, anyone with an IP and a pulse. So you want to Rick and Morty D&D? Fine, we'll do one for you. We'll have it on the shelves for Christmas. You got a movie coming up? Fast and Furious D&D? We'll get some... let's just polish off the vehicle rules there, slap them in as an addendum, and stick Vin Diesel on the cover, and we are good to go, baby. We'll have that outside 2 months. It'll be there in the marketing mix as you run up to the movie release. The McRib's coming back. McDonald's needed D&D. Get it out there. And what do we not need for this? Well, we don't need creative talent. We're done with them. And we don't need an awful lot of the other administrative team leads. We certainly, on the unionization front, we want to take away any potential rock stars or nuclei of resistance. So get rid of some of those people. And that's basically the roster for those who lost their jobs this week. It is the people who, if you're going to fold the company into the greater Hasbro kind of sphere, you don't need any of those people. So they haven't, they're cutting creative talent because they don't need them anymore. They have the actual rules for D&D for the next edition are probably set in stone at this point. You can do community management stuff by making monks slightly better and pushing that out the door in a playtest, inverted commas. But that doesn't change the fundamentals. The fundamentals are set. It's going to be the next Monopoly. It's slightly more niche market, but look, it's making lots of money. Monopoly goes for what? What do you pay for a box of Monopoly now? It's $30.
I think it's probably gone up to 50, 60 just because of inflation.
That seems expensive for Monopoly.
Yeah, but
I'd prefer if you buy more than one type of Monopoly.
Okay.
That's I think where we're going with this. I thought they were going to sell the company. Now I think they're doing something much more brutal, which is decapitating it, zombifying it, and lashing it to the wheel for as long as that lasts. Yeah, that's where I think this is leading.
So, but one of the issues with that is that D&D doesn't have to kind of MCU D&D. D&D doesn't have classic characters you can tempo around.
Neither does Monopoly.
Neither does Monopoly.
That's the beauty of it.
But like, if you want to license lifestyle brand stuff, like no one wears Monopoly t-shirts. You know, you want lifestyle brand stuff. You need characters that people kind of care about. And because D&D was always built to be a vehicle for people to create their own character, you don't have the same, here's a character that we can build a film about or a TV show or a web series or we can sell you a t-shirt of.
Exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills D&D is where they're going with this. There's no distinction. They don't care about the IP that D&D carries. I mean, they clearly don't care about the IP that Magic the Gathering carried. I quite liked the Weatherlight saga stuff from back in the day when they finally nailed down the setting. The setting doesn't matter. Can I put Transformers on it? Can I put My Little Pony on it? Can I put Manchester United, the Manchester United D&D, Ted Lasso RPG? That'll sell. Put that guy with the mustache on the front of the book. Stick that in the aisle. That'll sell. People like that show. They'll buy that. Your dad liked that show. They'll buy that. Dad's Army D&D. Why not? The rule set doesn't matter, and we've proven it doesn't matter. We nailed it down. We're not doing a new edition. Don't call it a new edition. I think they're lobotomizing the company because they want a quiet, tidy moneymaker that they can hawk. They can go around and facilitate other people's IPs till the end of time and never have to hear any nonsense about legal frameworks and errata and system balancing and edition wars ever again. It bores them. It bores them, confuses them, it terrifies them in equal measure. They don't need it. They don't want it. And this is the answer to the conundrum of what to do about WotC. Chop the head off and get the body to work. So that's where I see it going. There's an upside to this. Lots of creative people released into an industry that doesn't have enough places for them and who are already used to shitty working conditions. Startups are 10 a penny, produce interesting stuff. I mean, and that's where the interesting stuff will come out of next year.
I feel like there's more companies that have positions that could possibly absorb the weight of people than there were in the past. But yes, I would not be shocked to see some kind of Paizo 2.0 developing in the aftermath of this, and just another company coming together to produce something maybe a little bit more.
See, the issue with that for me is I think the nucleus around which stuff is going to cluster is things like Critical Role and Matt Colville's stuff, which have a huge following and people will drift to as being very slightly different to D&D. And in that case, the creatives, again, don't matter at all. They're worker bees. What matters is the people who've used parasocial networking to forge a legion of unhealthily parasocialized fans who will defend and buy whatever they produce, irrelevant to quality. So the whole idea of creating a good new game is even harder because there's just less space. You're trying to find the small number of people who greatly care about content, who greatly care about mechanics, and prove to them you're producing something really good and really worth playing. That's extremely difficult because there's very little space. I mean, people are going to go, "Oh, just play this one." And I was like, "Yeah, but the game's bad." But that doesn't matter to a huge number of people.
Well,
you've got a very narrow definition of good and bad as it relates to games, Owen, and that's fine. That is what a connoisseur should be. Someone who really slices the pie. But that turns it back on the audience then, on the marketplace. Like, well, you'll buy anything, so we'll produce anything. And if that's what you honestly think about most of the people we play games with, then okay. But it's so the industry is ultimately product of what sells, and we've tried to highlight the whys and the hows and the wherefores of what is being offered for sale. But ultimately, it does come down to what will people buy? What are they aware of? Can't buy something you don't know about. Dave.
Ultimately, like if people are buying WotC material, WotC are going to keep releasing material, as they have been. There's no they're not going to suddenly go, we need to create the finest RPG. Why? What's their motive?
Yep. Slap Winnie the Pooh on the box and get it out of here. Actually, Winnie the Pooh's out of IP now, isn't he? That's can we do the Mickey Mouse RPG? Can we do the Mickey Mouse RPG?
Yes.
Mickey Mouse. Yeah, isn't it Mickey Mouse year next year?
There are specific visual things you can do. Pooh can't have a shirt. Mickey Mouse has to have no whites on his eyes. There's a couple of wrinkles on it. Yes, but he can't look like what you think Winnie the Pooh looks like,
it's the old
Mickey Mouse looks like.
It's the old Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse.
Yes, you can do Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse. You cannot do House of Mouse Mickey Mouse.
Oh my lord! This 2024, folks. We're gonna do right after this. I think we're gonna. Okay, let's wrap this up. This year is now reviewed. Oh my word! What rating 1 to 10? 2003 in tabletop gaming. How would you rate it? I'm gonna just go around the table. 2020. What did I say?
You said 2003, which I don't even remember that happening.
Happier times. My word. We were so young and innocent.
This lot?
Yeah, I know. You're coming in at the end. So, Dave, 2023 in a blank, all-encompassing 0 to 10 rating.
I'm going to say a 6.
That's a solid 6, but yeah,
because there's still like hobbyist creators or smaller creators creating interesting or even, dare I say it, good material. You don't have to rely on the big names for material as much as it would be great to have a company that treated D&D like a hobbyist would. That's not happening in the foreseeable future.
And to our great credit, we haven't probably given those properties enough care and attention. Something we'll look at next year. Scarr, 0 to 10.
Ooh. I kind of feel like very similar to Dave, although I might. This is the cynicism of me is starting to go up like hives, and I would say I'd go down as low as 5.
Okay.
But with the proviso that there is again good stuff happening in the margins, and if there was ever a year where you decided that you were done with the big lads and you were going to go off the reservation, find those various garage made war games and online CCGs and indie RPGs on itch.io, stuff you can just run together for a table, the madness of where you're playing Gurren Lagann, fighting giant insects in your
all right, you said 5 it is. Grand.
Yeah,
good year for Lancer, actually. Now you mentioned the grungier stuff. Hida, you know exactly how reductive this exercise is. Give me your 0 to 10.
7. I had a ton of fun this year. Ton of great year for actual playing games. I played a ton of great board games, played a ton of well-produced RPGs, played some great computer games. But what I see it's rough on the creative end, and I see it's rough on what's going to happen in terms of what's going to be successful. Because everything I see being successful is,
creatively bankrupt.
It's certainly depressing. If you like certain things, if you like an approach to complexity and depth and having lots of options available and lots of different flavors you can try, this is bad unless things collapse back to the 90s, which that's when I came up and I thought that was great, having a different RPG for every setting and a different RPG for every. I know that's some people's definition of hell, but I thought it was great. And I mean, the board game show, you can just teach people new games. Just live with it, Have a teaching game, guys. Come on,
They should think of young, malleable minds, yeah.
Do some homework.
My kid loves homework.
Yeah.
Can't get enough of it. We'll absorb any amount of lore, though. I know more about Choo Choo Charles now than I ever thought I would. For me, I'm going to split the diff here. I'm going to say, like Owen, actually pretty good year for creative releases. They're just out in the margins. So a 7 if you like games, a 9.5 if you like drama around the games industry. It was an amazing year for craziness. We haven't touched on half of it. Some of the up and comers had a good year. Lancer got a second edition, something happening there, and it's had a lot more attention in the fringes of the RPG space. From I've watched any amount of Lancer lore and kind of other kind of small YouTube channels that are really vibing on Lancer, which I think bodes well for it next year. And there's there's been ups and downs, but lots of good fringe stuff. Hopefully, this episode contains a couple of reviews for you to listen to as we wrap up this year in review and turn our attention to something else. So we're not going to do the outro now, because hopefully something comes after this that isn't just me singing or something like that. So reach further into the bumper Christmas stocking, pull out another tidbit, another juicy morsel, and we'll probably see you next year, where I think, with any luck, we'll be kicking off with a predictions episode. Yeah, that'd be cool. That's what I'm going to predict right now. Now let me go and find people to appear on that.
Oh no!
But let's draw down the year in review, and we'll talk to you again soon. Well, here we are, back again, where in some sense it all began. I'm joined in this little segment. Hello, Christmas party goers. I'm joined in this segment by the redoubtable Mr. E.
Hello.
Who is, yes, hello. Oh, redoubtable and enthusiastic. I love it when someone brings the energy, you know, especially, I'm sure it's, if you're listening to this, folks, Christmas Day or sometime after it, I'm sure you're all snuggled down to eggnog and repeat watches of, what's your favourite Christmas movie, Mr. E?
Toss up between Die Hard and Gremlins, I guess.
Good choices, yeah. I've always been fond of Scrooged with what's his face,
The
Bill
Muppets
Murray.
one?
No, the
Oh.
Bill Murray one. I think that's great.
I think
Although
the Muppets iteration is definitely the best telling of that story. And I think it's because Michael Caine treats all of the Muppets as fellow actors and plays it straight down the line. Guys are
100%
genius.
straight. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, in many ways, the Scrooged is way more cartoonish. But I think, given that it's set in the 80s, I think they both stand up as period pieces now. You know, 1880, 1980 is a world away. In fact,
Yeah,
we'd have to cast our mind back. Yeah.
Yeah, the late 1900s, as the kids call it these days. Just in case you weren't feeling old enough.
Journeyed across the boundary between centuries, and only to discover we'd forgotten our toothbrushes. It is, in fact, the 80s, the 1980s, that we have to cast our mind back to, in some sense. Like I said, back where it all began. Why are we back in this segment? Let's put our poor listeners out of their misery.
Well, we're back, I think, primarily to say how right we were. Because you and I sat down twice, I believe, and discussed the re-release of Hero Quest.
Oh, that seems like a while ago. Was that
It was. And
2 years ago?
I'm sure, there'll be very helpful links to previous iterations provided somewhere.
Don't bet on it.
Okay.
But yeah, sure. we'll point to the episode in question.
But
let me just have the...
For a quick recap, Hero Quest was a formative very importantly, introductory board game to the world of fantasy gaming for you and I specifically, and for many, many people in general, because it was released through sort of standard game and toy shop channels rather than being some sort of niche product. And it had TV advertising and things like that.
Famous TV advertising either side of the Atlantic. It was released with Milton Bradley in partnership with Games Workshop. They also did... They weighed in on Space Crusade as well. We've talked about that elsewhere. Yes, we addressed this topic September 22nd, 2020, where we were getting all G'd up for the imminent announcement by Hasbro and Avalon Hill, where they were going to reveal what they had in store for Hero Quest. And I think both of us watched that. And the next day, it was September 23rd, we got on back in episode 611. And if I'm not mistaken, this is now episode 778. That's, okay, a lot of numbers on the bridge. But we were a little bit bummed out because they really hadn't changed much, had they?
There was kind of a roller coaster. There was the initial announcement, and I went, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." And then they did the release of what was in it, and I went, "You guys, you could have done so much better." And then we're now, and we're a couple of years later, and we've actually played it
A little bit wiser.
a little bit.
Maybe a little bit more forgiving, even. And we had to help us in this task because we are 40-something-year-old men, so we needed to draft in some fresh eyes to see it the way we saw it. So we both are lucky enough to be in possession of a son apiece,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
sat them down, and
Which,
all
I'll be
four of us
honest,
give it a go.
it's a substantial investment just to put out a good game review. But I
Yeah.
think the resulting product is going to speak for itself.
We're going to reap those rewards for the next while. There's lots of. I mean, our first run through of Axis and Allies is going to be very entertaining. Okay. Well, anyways. So yeah, we got the boys around the table, cracked open the base game. None of the expansions, none of the not Kickstarter, but whatever. I can't even remember what they
Stretch
used.
goals.
Stretch goalie things. They used the Hasbro Avalon Hill thing that they do these things through. Their pre-order engine, if you will. We just sat down with the base game, which has since sort of found its way, ironically enough, to toy store shelves again, as it's been dumped onto the open market because I don't think it's sold desperately well. Well enough that they've done expansions, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's certainly out there to be found at a decent price. Given the price of more specialist board games these days, this is a relatively affordable. I think I paid about 80 odd euros for it.
I think that's going to be a really important point over the course of this discussion. You picked it up for about 80 quid, is my recollection. And I think that's a good price point for what you get. However, on the shelf, in a full retail shop, if you walk into, I know that at about the same time or within a month or so, I had been in a local game shop here in Dublin, and it was at its standard price, which I think was €130. And that's a lot more money.
It's big box. Big box. It's full of miniatures.
Yeah, but I think the €80 price point that you actually paid for it and got it for is where it should be for what you get. And 130 is not. It was way too expensive. And the fact that it was at that price point is why I hadn't bought it. Because as previously discussed, we both saw it coming. We both went, we have boys who are at about the right age for this kind of thing. It'd be a great pickup for them. And then I know I certainly did, and I believe you did, went, well, that's a lot of money.
We sucked our teeth a bit and went, oh, that's a spicy enchilada.
Yeah.
Let's just see how it goes. And I suppose, and okay, so we've had our hands in it. We've taken it out. We've lovingly sort of spread it all across the table. And there's lots of things we can, there's lots of positives about it. But it's funny because I think and it was our reaction on the day as well, because they hadn't done anything materially different with the rule set and the way the game plays, is I think why I wasn't going to jump at that point. And it would form the backbone of my problems with the game as it stands today, because it is actually just the same game at heart.
Yep, absolutely. 100% agree. And that is why when we did our previous thing, our predictive stuff, I said it sounds very expensive if they're not going to put any work into the rules. And having come out the other end and played it, yeah, they didn't put any work into the rules. That's why I don't think
at all.
That's why I don't think it's worth the extra money that they wanted for it. And if you can pick it up cheap, great. But it's not worth the full price that they want.
What they have done is they've completely overhauled all of the miniatures. They're all bigger and beefier now, and they look great. They're in a really nice plastic. They're good sculpts. They've got a lot of things that were cardboard in terms of the scenery and the furniture and doors and things are now solid plastic, and I do mean solid. This is stuff you could quite happily bounce off the wall and know it'd be intact. The closest touch point would probably be, is it Mantic Games dungeon scenery? They've got that chunky plastic that they've put out. It's really good, nicely detailed.
Mm-hmm.
In a nod to the old school hero quest, they did include a little sprue of skulls and rats that can be attached to the scenery as one feels needed, just to give it that dungeon vibe. And I believe, I'm pretty sure they did a very good recreation of the original artwork. So if you open it up and just look at it, it's like, yep, that's the original board, right down to the colors. If you really zoom in, you can see the kind of the fingerprints of digital work. So it's, as far as I can tell, it is a very good, faithful recreation without doing anything wildly different. They didn't really give it much of a glow up, but they rezzed it up so that it looks great in its current incarnation. And the cards, there's some new art. I think there's some new there's new back art for a lot of it, and new, very in the style of black and white art, but mechanically nothing's really that different. It's hard to, it'd be hard to justify it at the 130, 140 price point. Now, the expansions are where they've introduced lots of new kind of ideas and mechanics and loops and flourishes on the original game. They've reproduced the original expansions, Keller's Keep and Court of the Witch Queen, Witch King, something like that. I should look that up. And Against the Ogres, I think, got done as well. And then there's been all sorts of other Magic Mirror stuff and all sorts of things that introduce new oddities and weirdness. But we're not here to talk about that. We are just here actually to put something in the Christmas stocking, as it were. But you know, this is in keeping with the sort of, this is looking to the ghosts of Christmas past. This would have been, in all likelihood, under the tree for us when we were kids. Did we both own a copy? I think
we did. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd like to imagine that. I suppose what we were looking for was to rediscover the joy of our boyhood through the eyes and the ludic imagination of our offspring. And I think we were fairly successful in that.
I think, I have to admit, I think it has been pretty good. I know my boy really, really enjoyed it. He was happy to sit and play through the game, and he stayed remarkably focused on playing through it. He was playing the wizard through his various missions, and took him a little bit of time to get to grips with the vast selection of spells, but he was able to pick out the ones that are fantastic, that he desperately wanted to use, and smite the big bad with his genie attack.
That genie, oh boy, some roll. That's a big share shot if ever I saw one.
And then it was great to see how involved he got, how focused he was on it, more so than I thought he would be. And I know that it wasn't long after we had our first get together that he was asking me, "Can we go do that again? Can we go back down to visit and have another bash?" Which we did, of course.
And a few more in our future, I think. Yeah. But I wonder how long it will keep their attention, because they've seen now most of the mechanics that the game has to offer. After this, it's kind of variations on rooms and traps and things like that. I think traps.
Our last session highlighted some of the game mechanic weaknesses that are in there. The first one that struck me was your character progression. You're 3 missions in and people are still saving up for the first kind of thing that will make their character in any way better. It was particularly painful for somebody playing the wizard, where I'd say it's about 6 or 7 missions worth of stuff you got to wade through before you can afford anything that is of any use to the wizard in terms of gear.
And there isn't much of it, yeah.
Yeah, and there isn't much of it. The second one was right at the end of that Orc Warlord mission. So, we brave the dungeon. We hack our way through the outer guards. We defeat the bodyguard. We finally find the Orc Warlord himself and slay him. And in the room behind the room that the Warlord is, there's a small room with a chest in it. Like there's a physical chest piece of scenery put down. So obviously, like, we had two boys and
Make for the
me
chest.
who were
It's a
like,
race.
woohoo, loot, let's go get it. Obviously there was a trap. Saw
Yeah,
that coming a mile away. The presence of the trap is fine, but the chest didn't have anything in it. Like there was no scripted
Nothing
reward
special in it. No,
for
not at
looting
all.
the chest. It's just a standard, the same thing as you do in every room. If you search for treasure, you draw from the treasure deck. That's it.
And at that point, you'd exhausted that down to wandering monsters.
Yes,
so...
there was nothing left in the treasure deck except monsters and traps. Like that really struck me as here is one of those bits where if they'd taken the time to review the game mechanics, to polish up the scenarios, this would have been a perfect fix point, because you get what is clearly should have been you've beaten the big boss, you've killed the orc warlord, now you get to loot his treasury, and it's just, oh look, the treasure chest has another orc in it. Good luck.
Surprise!
It's terribly disappointing.
It is a little. The original missions as they're written, and they've largely been kind of untouched in this. They're a little bit mean. Like there was a pit trap right in front of that chest, if I recall.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So as soon as you step in the room, right, you're in a pit trap. Yeah, I think it's an interesting game in that it points the way to more mechanically interesting and engaging things. My problem with, and it's not so much that I have a problem with HeroQuest, my problem with the current kind of crop of dungeon delvers is that, to the best of my knowledge at least, from HeroQuest, it's a big leap to the next thing, which arguably could be something like Blackstone Fortress or, I don't know, Gloomhaven. If you're lucky enough to find a copy that you don't have to remortgage to purchase. There's a few others, but you to get into that world, you're going to have to drop significantly more than the bargain basement 80 quid I was able to secure HeroQuest for. And at the price you're paying for HeroQuest, it would have been nice if there was more to it. I'm probably going to have to go and look for better HeroQuest rules to use with that set, or just make them up, because that's the next thing you do. I'm pretty sure we exhausted HeroQuest pretty quickly when we were kids and just started making things up.
We did. Yeah, we improved functionally like D&D.
It's always waiting there for you. Just
yeah.
As soon as someone says, well, "Can I ask a question?" You're into D&D, and there's no going back. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think we're going to enjoy it a little bit more. We of course very quickly discarded a lot of the inane drudgery that comes with roll to move. It was more of a, once you've cleared, if there's no enemies present, you can stack up on the next door SWAT style, and we'll get back to playing. And I think that helped to reduce some of the
and that's coming from being informed by newer, better games.
Yeah, Descent and all the rest. But overall, I thought it's been a fun exercise. I guess I'm hoping I can find the next stepping stone. It's not that I particularly need my son to follow exactly my hobby footsteps. He'll do his own thing. But for me not to get bored and to keep them engaged, I think that HeroQuest is a launch pad. But
I would agree. I think for now, actually, with the lads being the age they are, they're both 9. I think they could play through quite a substantial chunk of the printed HeroQuest material and be perfectly happy. Give them another few years, get them up to about 12, and they will need something better.
Should they stick with it, and we don't lose them to Fortnite or NFT flipping or whatever it is going to do.
Whatever the kids are doing these days.
Are talking to their AIs.
You're such an old man.
Oh, man. Oh, listen, this has got nothing to do with this segment. but I happened to find myself in a toy shop the run up to Christmas the other day, in the company of my cousin's kid, who's also of an age, same age 9, and for reasons we were treating the boys. I said, "Look, what would you like?" And he wanted Pokemon cards. Perfectly cromulent thing for a young boy to want. Apparently, Pokemon cards are still popular. Just in case anyone was wondering. I don't know. But I quizzed him a little bit, and he was like, "What?" And he got the flashiest pack he could see. Not necessarily the one with the most cards in it, but it was certainly the one that was laid out to look as if there was more to it. It was like 4 boosters and a big version of card and a couple of foils. I know nothing about Pokemon cards, but I asked him a few questions. Like, he's got no idea how the game is played. I don't think he's ever seen a full Pokemon deck.
Yep.
They certainly don't care what condition the cards are in. They're usually held together in a big lump with a rubber band, and I'm pretty sure I picked some of these out of a puddle of hot chocolate later that night. And it just struck me that these things are entirely totemic. Going back to conversations we've had over the last couple of days, and you'll hear some of them in other parts of this episode, Wizards would love their game to be Pokemon. That the cards themselves have just an intrinsic allure. It doesn't matter what's on them. It just matters that they're cards that a kid wants. I mean, you can write any rules you like and put them on it. They're never going to read them. They're never even going to look at them.
Yep.
Put a picture of a thing they like on it. Put it in a nice flashy, splashy pack. Give them something to compare to other kids. You know, did you get a foil one? Does your one have coffee stains on it? Whatever. And it's just like.
But then of course, the desire to have that foil and the extra one will lead to the arguments, and they will be almost immediately banned at your kid's school.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've already seen this.
My experience has anything to go by.
But that allure of the card as what is the card if it's not a playing card?
Well, it's inherent to Pokemon. Every version of Pokemon, it's you gotta catch them all. It's
right.
You know, the collection is a key part of it, and be it Pokemon cards or Match Attacks football cards was a big one in this house last year, and we've managed to so far largely dodge it this year. But it's having them. It's trying to complete the collection. I got my personal favorite. I got my personal favorite in shiny. I got my personal favorite in foil, and the alternative art, and there is a little thing in everybody's brain that makes you more or less, susceptible to this collector drive, and that is very exploitable in kids.
Yeah. So I suppose on reflection, we dropped a certain amount of money for this collection of utterly random cards that he does not understand and that on their own don't actually do anything. And the box of Hero Quest is an entire thing. It has everything you need in it, right down to the dice and the character sheets. It is complete and it is knowable in all of its facets. And it works. It operates. It does the thing it's meant to do.
Yep.
And I think, given the choice, I'd much prefer. Maybe it's a little bit stale, but
the thing is,
it is there.
For you and I, who have played many different board games over the years, have spent decades playing these things and found really good ones, and have budgets that stretch to, say, GW's more recent offerings like Blackstone Fortress and Curse City, both of which I highly recommend.
Yeah, Blackstone's very good.
In that kind of context, Hero Quest, unchanged as it has been for 35 years or whatever it is a poor game. However, if you're a 9-year-old who hasn't played all those games, it's a lot of fun. You got to wander around punching goblins in the head and rolling dice and summoning genies to kill bad guys and searching for treasure and things like that. Do I recommend paying full whack for that game? No, I don't. But if you have kids of a certain age and can get it at a cut down price, it's it's not a bad choice.
It's pretty damn good, especially considering it is not locked to just that use. There's nothing to stop you pulling out a baby's first D&D, a retro clone or a strip down, or even any other system you happen to have to hand, or just make one up on the fly and start, giving the monsters some voices. Because you've got the furniture, you've got the doors, you've got the board, tunnels and rooms, and you've got all those cool minis.
Yep.
Why wouldn't you?
You could just use all that stuff for your D&D sessions if you wanted.
Absolutely. For that alone, it's pretty good. Starting, it gets you off the ground very quickly for a lot of different things. But yet there it is, a little bit stale, but whole, complete. It's still and it works after all this time. And it doesn't lose any of that. You take it away, take any part of it away from the whole, and you still have a usable figure, a usable bit of terrain furniture, some usable dice, whatever's floating your boat. So yeah, overall, it was quite nice to kind of crack open that musty old tome and try and vaguely remember what it was like the first time we stepped into a dungeon. And certainly it won't be the last. All right, so that's that. Did I mention the Discord in this bit? I think I probably mentioned it about 5 times this episode. But if you've got any nostalgia stories about those first games, those formative games that got you into the hobby, a well-loved copy of Settlers of Catan, a very well-thumbed copy of a fighting fantasy book, or anything else in between, we'd love to see you in our Discord. Check the description in the show notes. But I think it's time we rolled this one up, put away the old nostalgia goggles, and moved on to the next section. Well, folks, that's it for another year. 2023 is just about done, and it's been a year of ups and downs. Personally, I think it could have been a lot worse. When things come to an end, or when things get shook up, that's when new ideas, new opportunities arise. And I think 2024 could be pretty good. At least interesting. From all of us here at the Adventuring Party, we hope you've enjoyed this Christmas special. We've certainly enjoyed making it, and we hope it'll carry you through into the new year. We'll be dropping our first episode of the new year, January 14th, so we're taking a little break now to enjoy Christmas that's hopefully, for you and for us, full of games and celebration. So come back to us next year when we'll be dropping our predictions for 2024 episode, and hopefully we'll see you then. But until then, this party's over. Thank you for listening to the Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.